It's 5 thieves versus the worst that the horrors of the road can throw against them in today's auto battle challenge for Final Fantasy Tactics. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including the occasional challenge run of battles in Final Fantasy Tactics, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. For all of you who may be new around here, this is a lead up to my next entry in the Fixing Every Job series that I've been doing for the various different jobs in Final Fantasy Tactics, and we will soon be covering Thieves. As part of that series, I go through and record a bunch of footage of different characters in the job that I'm going to be discussing, auto-battling through various different random world battles to get some nice background footage while we discuss what it is that they're able to do and what I'd like to see changed for them at some point in the future, hypothetically or otherwise. However, I found that these auto battles can actually be pretty fun to watch, especially if I give the different characters in the battle a range of different abilities to give them a few different combat roles, and you guys seem to enjoy me putting it out there for you all to see so we can all observe how the classes and jobs function and how the AI chooses to use the abilities that I've given to them. The challenge? See how long this particular party of 5 can get through as many different random battles as possible before one of them inevitably expires, at which point the team is disqualified and we can move on to the next job in the race. Today, our intrepid team of thieves manages to get through 5 whole bouts before losing anybody, and I gotta say that last fight is a pretty interesting one, so I hope you wind up enjoying that. I'll have some commentary at the beginning and potentially at the end of each different fight to go over how I feel it went and what I found particularly interesting about the AI's behavior. But beyond that, I'll leave you to enjoy some slightly sped up tactics gameplay with some of its lovely OST in the background. For our first battle here that I'm calling Animal Lovers, it's a pretty clear demonstration of just how powerful Charm can be, especially if you wind up spamming it on the enemy. It's a pretty clear demonstration of how being able to turn enemies into allies, even temporarily, can dramatically swing the balance of power in your favor, especially when those enemies are relatively powerful monsters that can then turn around and immediately slap their friends because, you know, they're all in a formation together. This is a theme that we will see come back later on in the challenge, but with more varying results. Next up, we have Desert Destruction, and I have to say, not really a whole lot to be concerned about in this one. Between the relative fragility of the arm and class of monsters and the fact that bombs aren't particularly fast, nor do they have great movement range, and it's pretty easy for a team of thieves to run circles around them. In particular, we see one of our thieves making great use of his glacial gun that I equipped him with to pick off the fragile armament and then pester the bombs from range. All told, not too much for them to be concerned about here, but definitely fun to watch them pick apart the enemy in relatively short order. For battle number 3, we have Fear on the Mountain, and this is where I started to sweat a little bit and began to wonder if our run was going to come to an end. And while obviously it does not, there's definitely some close calls, with the major save coming from some creative use of Bard skill to give a bunch of allies re-raise, something that I certainly wasn't expecting to see the AI even try, let alone be as effective as it was. The real key takeaway from this fight, though, I feel like, is just how devastatingly powerful late-game Minotaur enemies can be with the raw damage output that they have against you or potentially their friends. In battle number 4, Volcanic Victory, it's kind of a repeat of the desert map, but what I like the most about this particular battle, even though we take the enemy apart pretty quickly, is how much it emphasizes the Thieves' increased move and jump range as basically negating any terrain difficulties that maps like this would otherwise provide for slower allies. Whereas a knight or a chemist or various different mages could very easily get bogged down and only be able to reach certain areas of safe stone to step on if they don't have some sort of ignore terrain modifiers or something they can use to walk across lava. Thieves can just leap, bound, and do acrobatic kick flips through the air to jump across the lava like it's nothing and wind up right in the enemy's face to dish out massive amounts of damage. That speed is particularly useful when dealing with undead enemies, by the way, as you can pretty much pick apart the entire enemy party before those undead even start to get back on their feet. So, a good way to negate that whole mechanic just through outspeeding it and out DPSing it, which is awesome. And finally, we get to battle number 5, and this is where we actually wind up seeing that preference for charm coming in to bite us pretty severely. This one I've called Oblivious Ogling for reasons that will become very apparent, and between just brutally powerful chocobos with big counterattacks, tanky female knights that wind up being the target of our misplaced affection more often than not, and very mobile birds that can get in behind us and deal chip damage to bring down weakened targets, this one wound up being pretty brutal. Let's just say it's not just one character that we wind up losing here. And there we have it, my friends. 5 auto battles before the team inevitably lost not just 1, not just 2, but 3 members of the party, as our last couple of thieves were just too busy trying to get in the knight's pants to even worry about finishing the fight to patch up their friends or trying to res them in the middle of the battle. I do love that at any point our thieves could have begun attacking the knights, especially with a gun, to try and bring them down more quickly, and they said, no, 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 no. What if instead I tried to charm them? Equally, I really like the wherewithal of the one female knight who, even though she had just gotten attacked by her charmed ally who'd finally fallen for our wily, roguish wiles, she said, no, 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 I know who the problem is here. Not my sister Becky over here. No, no, no. That scumbag. He's got to go, and immediately went and slapped our thief in the face. Even though he didn't get downed, it did show a little bit of an intellect on the enemy AI side, which was very funny to watch play out in real time. That said, I'm going to wrap this one up here and begin prepping the next entry in the Fixing Every Job series. Thank you to all of my channel supporters, both my YouTube members and my patrons, for helping to make this channel possible. Your direct contributions and support make all the difference, especially in the ever volatile sea of ad rev and sponsors and everything else that goes into YouTube. Being able to rely on you guys is massively helpful, and as such, I can't wait to be able to pay you all back by providing y'all with some custom characters that you get to design and make me use when we wind up streaming Final Fantasy Tactics: The Evil East Chronicles when it releases on September 30th. If you want to get in on that action, you can check the link to my Patreon down below. $10 and up patrons get priority access to having a custom character made for them. Of course, YouTube members and lower tier patrons do as well, so no worries there. Or if you just want to be able to support, those links are also massively helpful too. Thank you to anyone new and old who has supported or chooses to support the channel. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, everyone. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.